Hi guys, welcome to part 6 of our life science unit. Today's lesson is going to be about some ELA and writing component that's going to tie into parts 1 through 5 that we've been talking about. So before I explain that to you, I would like to recap part 5 and make sure we're all on the same page with the questions that we had to answer and the book that we read together. So our question we had to think about was, what do animals need to survive? And there were 2 questions I asked you to think about as I was reading the book Hey Diddle Diddle, A Food Chain Tale. The first question, what animal depends on blank? And the second question, what would happen if there were no blank? So I had a lot of people who had related back to this picture here. So what would happen if there were no snakes? What would this hawk have for breakfast if there were no snakes? So if there were no snakes, the hawk would probably go hungry. So what would happen to the hawk if there were no snakes? He would be hungry. So that's just a little connection with the questions that I asked you to think about. So you had 2 prediction questions to answer. One, what do animals need to survive? And this question was kind of similar to what an animal needs in their habitat. And a lot of you had the same responses here: water, food, shelter, and air, and those are correct. And the second question, why do animals depend on other animals to survive? And I had several students answer that animals eat other animals to survive. And you can see that that is correct when you are listening to this book here. So now moving on to our reasoning. So we need to know the reason that there are certain animals in a food chain. So I had an answer here. The reason there is a caterpillar in the food chain is because it is the lizard's source of food. So you can think back to those questions. If there were no caterpillars, the lizards would probably go hungry. And I had a really nice connection as well from another student, a connection in the food chain. So it kind of ties back into the caterpillar and the lizards here. The lizard depends on the caterpillar. The caterpillars depend on the leaves, and the leaves depend on water and sun to grow. So the sun and water help the leaves grow. The leaves are the food source for the caterpillars, and the caterpillars end up being a food source for the lizard. So that's another example of a food chain. So what I'm going to ask you to do today is a little bit of writing, and you've actually already seen a lot of these components. We're going to tie them back into our food chain lesson, and you're going to use that to write an article. So you're going to be using what you know about text features. So I'm going to pause there and recap some text features for you before we go any further. So a lot of you in my class have seen text features. We have a nice anchor chart on the wall. We have little examples like this in our workshops. Text features give us more information in a nonfiction text, and they make the text and pictures easier to understand. So we have some examples here: photograph, index, caption, bold text, and a diagram. Those are just a few examples. And I'm sure you all remember this article here, this little template that we use to create our own articles with some different text features. So your article that you're going to write is going to have a title. It's going to have a heading and some text. It's going to have an illustration and a caption. So I have another picture I'm going to share that has the definitions and some questions to ask yourself to be able to fill this out. I also want you to think back to the books that we were using in the classroom for this text feature activity. And all of these books have different text features in them. So we have headings here, we have text, we have illustrations, and we have captions. So this is a good resource to think back to remember what we were talking about with those different text features. So the text features I want you to think about today, let's get this clear for you. We have, there we go, the title, which is telling you the main idea of your whole article. So what animal is your whole article about? So we're actually going to be writing about a food chain, so you kind of want to focus on maybe the beginning or end and incorporate that main animal into your title. So your heading here is dividing your text into sections and tells the main idea of each section. So ask yourself, what about this animal are you specifically writing about? So again, we're thinking about food chains, so you want to tie that into your heading as well. The text here needs to be information that matches the heading that you gave. So everything that you write about needs to be about this heading that you gave. And then these two are probably the easiest. We have an illustration. This helps us see what's being talked about. An illustration is drawn by hand, so try your best. And then the caption, these are words that help us understand a photograph or illustration. So write a sentence or two to explain what you drew for your illustration. So again, this is the template that you saw in class, and this is the template I kind of want you to use as a guide. But if you think about it, this template's kind of boring. It's black and white. I could give you something like this to work with, but instead you can take any blank sheet of paper, just blank computer paper, and I've done the same thing, and I've made mine bright and colorful. So I could make my title up here. I could give my text a heading. I drew some lines, and if you don't have enough space on the front, feel free to go on the back and write some more. And then I have a space for an illustration or a drawing, and then my caption can explain what my illustration is about. So be creative, have fun with it, and you're going to use what you know about text features and what you have learned and what you research about food chains to write an article about a new food chain. So I want you to think beyond this book. Don't use any of the food chains you saw in this book. Try to come up with a new food chain. And I would love for it to have at least 4 parts like you saw in the formative assessment where you had to put the 4 things in order. So try to be creative. I can't wait to see your articles. And after this lesson, we're going to be doing some engineering or building of some habitat. So I can't wait to see you back here for our next lesson. Have a great day. Bye.